Are you timing us?
Maybe too.
Are you going to put us on a timer?
Your time is 1:45.
Yes, we wanted to do 10 minutes each so we can have 15 minutes for questions.
10 minutes or 15 minutes?
No, 10 each.
Okay.
So we have time for questions. So could you help us with the time, once it's 10 minutes, to just
So
do
she'll do
away?
10, she'll do 10 and I'll do 10.
Then 15 minutes for interaction.
Yeah.
Yes, we want them to ask questions.
Thank you so much.
Media, are you ready?
Yeah.
Great.
As long as you're ready, we're ready.
Good. Do you want me to start? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my name's Amanda Joy. I'm from the United States. I'm from Michigan. I'm like ecstatic to be here. I've almost cried several times already because being in India is huge for me and my business and the art forms that I do, which is Mehendi, which is very, very popular here in India. I think when I first saw the art form, I swear I thought I had done it in a past life. So I may have been Indian at one point. I believe that this art form creates healing. It has been a huge healing tool for me in my life. It's helped me overcome anxiety, panic attacks, fears. When I first started doing it myself, I'll never forget that because I had to slow down my breath just to lay a thin line. And I just felt really connected to it. When I saw the art form, I was working with refugees for several years. I saw that it broke all cultural boundaries, religious boundaries, and it's meant to bring women together for sacred ceremonial purposes. It's more than just art form on the skin. It's so much deeper than that. It goes back 5,000 years, and it's meant to bring about blessing, protection, and healing. I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and I gotta tell you how incredibly amazing it is that each person that I work with, I get to be intentional with them. I try to be as purposeful as possible by asking them questions. I sit down and I get to hold their hand, and I get to breathe with them. I get to create that same atmosphere of healing that happens when I do henna myself. I get to ask them questions about their life, their passions, who they are. And if you have ever got your hair done in a salon, you can only imagine that a lot of times you begin to open up with people. And I get to hear their stories and what they're going through. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this for my life. As a business owner, I've made it my mission to bring it back to its roots, which represents that healing aspect, right? It's supposed to bring out the inner light onto the skin. So I'm here today to share with you not just my business, Happy Henna. I'm here to share with you my nonprofit. It's called Henna Crowns of Courage. And when I first started doing this art form, I wanted to get in the hospitals, but none of the hospitals really knew what henna was. So I was like, you know what, maybe I can find some sort of ministry. And I started working with cancer patients in a salon that gave free services to them. And I started to hear their stories and the intense traumas that they were going through, especially through chemotherapy. Trauma it's a word that we all don't like to hear, but we all carry it on one level or another, one degree or another. And it's proven that when we don't share our traumas, we don't share our worries and our fears with other people, it gets stored up in our body. And it can create an intense illness inside of us, of depression, of loneliness. It can create even worse things like cancer, right? When someone is faced with a diagnosis like cancer, you can only imagine the fears that they might have. My goal is to help them choose love over fear. Through my nonprofit, I've made it into a platform for these women to share their stories. I get to adorn their heads after they lose their hair to chemotherapy. with these elaborate, personalized, lavender-infused designs on the crowns of their head, revealing their true beauty and their true strength onto the skin. Because it's so easy for them to get so caught up in, oh, I have cancer, this is my life, like I could die, like it's really scary. And I don't want them to think that that's who they are. Cancer is not their identity. Hair is not your identity. When you lose your hair within a month of being diagnosed, you look in the mirror and you might not recognize yourself anymore. And that's traumatic, and it's so traumatic for these women on such an incredible level. And to be able to use this art form as a tool, to be a platform for them, to see themselves as beautiful again. Through my nonprofit, we also do makeup for them, and I get to do these henna designs on their heads. They're not allowed to look in the mirror until we're completely done. And so you can imagine just that transformational mindset that they might have when they look in the mirror and they begin to cry and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this reminds me that everything in life is temporary, just like henna is temporary, and my hair will grow back. Through my nonprofit, I've crowned over 60 women and children, and I have an online platform where these women can talk with each other every single day, share their stories, share their traumas, because a lot of times they're not able to share with their family members. They don't want to complain with their family members. Their friends don't quite understand, and if they start joking about death or this, it's like morbid for them. But when they have a community of women that they can relate with and connect with, that has been huge. It's been such a healing tool for them. So I want to share with you guys a little story. I was able to do this Art Prize project where I crowned 22 women and share their stories in front of hundreds of people. One of the girls wasn't able to get crowned for the project, but I said, hey, how about you come and let me crown you in front of all these people? And she was very nervous, and every time she looked back at the other images of the women, she felt strength. She had never taken her wig or her scarf off in public before, but she knew that this is something that she had to do to overcome her fear. And what was really amazing is that we had a guy from the news station come and ask her questions and record what we were doing. And so she took her wig off for the first time and was crying, and she was so excited to be crowned. The night that we crowned her, there was a woman that came out of the crowd. She came up in tears saying, I had been diagnosed months ago and I haven't left my house in months. I haven't put makeup on, I hadn't put clothes on because I was afraid. And fear is a real thing, and we have a choice in life and everything to choose love or to choose fear. And I believe that choosing love is where healing begins. It starts with our mind, it starts with our thoughts and what we think. I believe that we can manifest in this world. So when we have something like henna that lasts a couple weeks, every time they look down at that, every time they see it, they remember the blessing that I spoke over them, that they're a goddess, that they're warriors, that they're strong, that they're brave, and that there's a whole huge group of women behind them that are waiting to hear from them, hear their stories. And when they share their stories, it frees them. It's amazing to see it. It frees them up to say, I have nothing else to hide, and I'm taking control over this cancer. I'm not afraid of this anymore. And you know what? I'm bringing awareness to all these people about what it's like going through chemotherapy, because I'm losing not only my hair, but my eyebrows and my dignity, and it's scary to go in public because everyone's staring at you. Like, that's huge trauma for these women. And so I'm so grateful that I've seen these women grow. This is just a tool for me. I just want to be a tool, a vessel of love for them. And through them sharing their stories, community's already happened. And that's how, like, we need each other. They need each other to overcome those fears and the loneliness that happens when they're going through a traumatic time like this. So I just want to thank you guys all for hearing these stories. If you want to hear more of these stories, I have a whole book of them here that I would love to share with all of you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I would say smile. That was amazing. I want to learn more about what you do. I do. So my name is Wendy Alexander. I am from the U.S., but I now currently live in Dubai. And so I recently shared my story, and actually I just sold out my books. Tracy has it. It's called Fearless Visionaries Tear the Veil. It's 2 volumes. I actually did it with 18 amazing women from around the world. Some of us are from Saudi Arabia, some of us are from U.S., some are from South Africa. We shared our traumas. Because most people know me as Wendy Alexander, Inspiring Decisions, international business strategist. I've been doing business in the Middle East for 13 years. When I came here last year, that was the story that I shared. This year, my story is different. I've moved on. I have now shared my story. I have now moved on to inspire and give hope. So my story actually started when I was 16 or 17 years old. I was a teenager who was supposedly in love with an ex-boyfriend who said that he loved me. And you know, when people are enjoying in their high school years, usually we're enjoying our time, you know, preparing for prom, we're ready to graduate, we're supposed to be having fun with our friends. Well, for me, it was a little different. When I was 16, my ex-boyfriend decided that he wanted to hold a gun to my head. He told me that if he can't have me, nobody can, that no one would ever love me but him, that if I told anyone, that he would kill my family. And unfortunately, I found myself at the barrel of a gun more than once with him. At 17, he continued to abuse me physically and mentally. I decided to go off to college, and the college that I had chose was actually about 4 hours away from my house. Now, most of the time when we're going off to college, we're researching, right? And we're saying, this is the school I want to go to, this is what I want to major in. Well, for me, it wasn't like that. I was actually trying to get away from him. So I didn't care what the school looked like. Had no idea. So the day before, I decided I was going to go. He found out, which I share within the book of Fearless Visionaries Tear the Veil, is that he, of course, didn't want me to leave and started threatening me. From that, I went on to college. I did go. I did end up leaving and going to Norfolk State University. At Norfolk State University, I decided to major in the first thing, honestly. I said, political science, that sounds good. But again, I was going to college with my trauma, with my pain. And I wasn't healing because I was still running and escaping from him. And so when I went to college, I thought I got away. But then one day I got a phone call from my roommate. And she tells me, someone's sleeping outside. And he's in the rain in the bushes. And it looks like the guy on the picture that I saw. And I was like, I can't believe he's coming here. Well, it was him. He would drive from North Carolina to Virginia every single day just for 1 hour to see what I was doing. And so finally, which I won't share with you exactly what happened because I want you to get the book, Fearless Visionaries Tear the Veil. It's actually on Amazon. It's a volume 1 and 2. The women that are in that book are now my sisters. I'm an only child. We have now been touring. We just left London. The United Nations in New York sponsored us as well. We left Paris, and so now I'm here in India. But one of the things I can say, since sharing my story, I feel so liberated. I feel like the weight it's like amazing because I'm thinking the whole time, like, I've been carrying this around for so long. And then the night, well, the night that I decided to share my story, we have a Facebook group called Fearless Visionaries Community. Anybody can join. We decided to go live and share our stories there. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I was like, I'm going live, I'm going to tell these people. You know, and the first thing you think of, okay, who's going to judge me? Is this going to be embarrassing? And then I said, you know what, it's not about me. It's not about me, it's about helping other women. It's about helping other teenagers. Because I have children too, so when my kids were growing up, I just drilled them so much, but now they know why. But once I shared my story on Facebook, because the other part I didn't tell you is that I'm a survivor. I tried to commit suicide 6 times during that time of being in that relationship with my ex-boyfriend. The 6th time almost took me out. And so I shared that story on Facebook, and as soon as I got off, this young lady messaged me, and she said, I was getting ready to take my life until you shared your story. So I will never forget that message. So since then, I've been helping her, and I don't know who she is like personally, but I've been getting help for her, supporting her through. She shared her story with me for the first time through Messenger, ever. And so that gave me the push and said, you know what, I need to continue to share my story. I need to show other women who are in leadership, who might be hiding behind that mask. They're calling the mask CEO. Because even though we're in leadership and I've been traveling all over the world to the Middle East and doing business, I still had all this trauma, but I did make it out. And I chose to heal. And one of my quotes I say to myself is now, I will not stand in my trauma, is that I will move forward. And so one of the other things is that I actually healed in the Middle East, which is different. I am a Christian. I am not Muslim. But I did heal in the Middle East. I found peace behind the veil. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I did wear the hijab and I wore the abaya. The choice was just to wear the abaya, but I chose to wear the veil. And I found peace behind it because I felt like, you know, I wasn't being judged. No one was worrying about me. No one knew who I was. I was able to really just be myself. And so for the last 13 years, I've been on this journey with God that I didn't even know I was on, that was going to bring me to sharing my story. And most importantly, I'm able to share it, believe it or not, in the Middle East. I found a group of women and a couple of organizations who are now working on mental health within the Middle East. And as most of you know, suicide is considered haram, which is sin in their culture, but it's still happening. I meet girls every day who are thinking about committing suicide from their culture. And so I said that I would have to be the voice. I was placed there for a reason. And so I will continue to share my story, to continue to inspire women and children, and just continue to tear my veil. So thank you.
Amanda and Wendy, I am so honored to just be in the middle of you two and the entire room. I am deeply grateful. My name is Naomi Osemedua, and I came all the way from Nigeria in West Africa. Traveled a mighty long way to come share my story in India. And that is powerful in itself because many years ago, I could never have imagined that in sharing my story, I would have an opportunity to do that way across from where I live in Africa. At the age of 22, I ran away from home and I eloped. And where I come from, that is a taboo. It's unheard of. It's so not common that a lot of people would ask me, where is he from? You know, kind of like, was he a foreigner who came and just took you away? I grew up in an expatriate community in Southeast Asia as a little girl. My father was working and we were there for about 4 years. And we got back to Nigeria and, you know, it was just back to school. But I had some setbacks. I wanted to study medicine as a little girl because I wanted to help people. So at 10, I felt the only way to help people was being a medical doctor. And the first school I got into, the medical department was not yet officially approved by the government. And so I decided to try another school. Well, that search led me to trying that school another school, and I ended up going back to where I came from. Now, when I got back to where I came from, guess what? My mates had left me. They were graduating, and I was just getting into school. Now, add the fact that as a young girl growing up in Southeast Asia, I was way bigger than the average girl. And so I struggled with a lot of low self-esteem. I struggled with my self-confidence. I just felt I wasn't good enough. And then the school thing happened, and it was like, oh great, something's just about my life. Why am I different? And so in the year 2000, when I met a young man, and he was into me and I was into him, and he promised me the world, and it just seemed reasonable. Like, well, finally, something good is happening in my life. And so I walked away from everything. I walked away from my family. I walked away from the safe place that I knew to a world that I had no idea what was waiting for me on the other side. But somehow I was willing to go on that journey. Well, 9 years later, I came out with 2 children and a victim of domestic abuse. And that was devastating in itself, because I gave everything to be in this relationship. I walked away from love to find another kind of love. And what I got in return was not what I wanted. It took a lot to make that decision, because again, it's a taboo. And so just before 31, I found myself alone with 2 kids, wondering, how did I get here? And I had a choice to stay and be defined by my past, or to look ahead and see the beauty of the future that I could have. And I'm glad I chose that option. And so one of the first things I learned is forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about you. It is the greatest gift that you can give to yourself. In my walk with women, I have heard stories that will make you cringe. One of such I am always quick to share was a client of mine who was raped at the age of 15 by armed bandits. How do you find them to come apologize? They raped her, she was a virgin. How do you ever find those people to come apologize to you? While I may not be able to take away your pain or feel the hurt that you have gone through, holding on to unforgiveness, holding on to your pain, is you giving power to that person who abused you in the first place. And so I chose forgiveness for myself, for everyone. I was mad at my family, I was mad at the world, I was mad at God, I was mad at everything under the sun. But I chose to forgive. And in 2013, so 2009 I left, and I was a single mom for 4 years. In 2013 I met a man. And because I was in a place of forgiveness and healing, my heart was open to finding love again, because I did not believe that all men were going to treat me that way. So I found someone who's been an amazing pillar of support. 6 years later, we have 2 children, and we're very happy. But I remember in 2013, after the wedding, I used to plan events. So 2015, I had had my first son after 12 years. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And so I found a live streaming app called Periscope, and I started going live. I became an early adopter in Africa because Periscope was new to the world. There was no Facebook Live, there was no Instagram Live. And I started live streaming. I started with inspiration and just was talking about my life. What else did I know to talk about? And 6 months later, my channel trended, and I became the first African woman to trend on the channel. And so today I'm commonly referred to as the African Queen of live streaming. And that opened me up to an entire business. And people wanted to know, how do I go live? How do I do this? And I kept meeting some amazing people around the world. And I realized I can take my brand from local to global. And so I started saying, why be local when you can be global? That journey took me to a place where one of such times I shared this story I just shared now of running away from home at 22. And people started sending me messages from all over. Organically, that post has had well over 500 shares. And people would just say, you just gave me hope. you just gave me hope. And I was like, how cool will it be to have different women come in and share their stories? And so the Women with Stories International was founded. And we started with a podcast on International Women's Day 2 years ago, March 8, 2017 actually. And by 2018, as I turned 40 last year, I decided to give a gift to the world. And so we had the first ever Women with Stories Global Conference. And we had speakers come in, just amazing women who have gone through so much trauma to actually share their stories with the world. Your story is your gift. Whatever you've gone through and you've survived, God has given you a cure. It is your responsibility to find that cure. And don't just keep it to yourself. Serve others with it. That's the work I do now. And in serving others, I have found even, greater healing. I am a Christian. And growing up as a little girl, I knew in my walk with God that He's a healer. And so trusting God to heal my heart was one of the first steps I had to take. And from healing my heart, because hurting people hurt others. You can't share your story from a place of hurt and not spread more hurt. If you're bitter, if you're angry and you share your story, you're hurting other people. You end up doing that somehow. And so from a place of healing, I could now spread healing. And so that's the work I do with the Women with Stories. And I invite anyone here, anyone listening to me to join us. And really just take your story to the world, because your story is your gift. The fact that you survived, again, you have a cure. The world needs your cure. Share it. Thank you.
So, any questions? Anything?
Can I come and hug you all?
Yes! I like that. Disrupt. Disrupt.
Thank you. That was great. You all made me cry.
Oh,
I'm so glad I bought with you last night.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank
That
you.
was awesome.
Thank you
Amazing.
so much. Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
I guess it requires a lot of courage to talk about your story, and the way you guys have come out is really awesome.
Well, thank you so much, because it is not easy. It's getting easier, because I just shared my story, as I said, in February. So I'm very, very new to sharing my story. But I also didn't add that I have 20 years of mental health and substance abuse background, where I worked with women and children for years. And so I was silently, as I call it, healing, but also helping them cure at the same time. And they couldn't understand, like, why are you advocating so hard for me? Why do you care so much? But that's the reason. So it does take a lot, but it's worth it.
So for me, when I started, really, it was something that I stumbled upon. I really didn't know how powerful it was going to be. And I think the greatest gift I have today is when people send me messages and just talk about how sharing my story and just really watching my journey so far has just inspired them to come out from that place where they've kept themselves. Because again, in my culture, if you go through the things I go through, the things I went through, and for so many, getting married again is not even an option. It's like, well, I'm now used product. And I came out with 2 sons, and the person I married had never even been married. And he literally adopted my sons, and now we have 2 more kids of our own. So that, again, has added to more inspiration for people. And I can't forget one message in particular I got from someone who read all of that in a post, and she just sent me a message privately on Facebook Messenger, and she was like, I'm 35 years old, I can't forget, and my auntie keeps taunting me that I will never be married, and my life is over, and she really wanted to get married. And she said, I just read your story of what you went through, and now you're married again, and you just had another child. Like, I have hope. Those were her words. And I just said, I wish you well, and hang in there, and just said a prayer for her. About a year later, I just saw a message on Facebook, I'm getting married. And I was like, I wasn't sure who that was. So I scrolled up, and it was that same girl. And I would often say this story because I believe if my story was the only thing she held on to that led her to that moment where she found love of her own, then that is just so powerful. So you really never know. It takes a lot of courage, but the lives that are being transformed just makes it all worthwhile. And I won't even stop sharing. I need more stages to share my story, to just help more people around the world.
Yeah. Do you want me to share?
Yeah.
So when I started becoming open and not living in my fear and my anxiety anymore, sharing with other people about my own personal traumas, and how henna has been a healing tool for me, it opened so many doors for other women to come in and feel comfortable with opening up to me. So that's just another avenue. When we do share our stories, so many other people start stepping out of the woodworks, right? And sharing their stories.
Absolutely.
And when I was able to use this as a tool of blessing to these women with cancer, not only with cancer though, I gotta tell you, every single person that I sit down and talk to, I get to hear their stories and them opening up and sharing, some of their traumas, and how weeks, months later, they'll come back to me and be like, oh my gosh, I remember, like, you have no idea, like, that moment that you spoke with me was powerful, but I didn't know it was going to impact me. That a week later, people they're coming up to me, not saying, oh, you have cancer, but they're saying, oh my gosh, you're a walking art piece. You're beautiful. Tell me what that means. Like, what is that? And they're able to share, like, who they truly are, right? Not just cancer. And then it also gives them that courage to talk with strangers, right? And maybe those strangers come up to them and say, like, oh, my daughter went through this, and it's so encouraging to see your strength and your power. You're walking out here with this artwork, and you're not afraid. And I want my daughter to feel that same way. I want my aunt, I want my mom, I want them to feel the same courage inside them, that same beauty. And so it's just really amazing that our firm has created a platform to help so many women at different levels with cancer, but also with girls with anxiety. I've done henna on girls who have dealt with self-harm and adorned them with henna, but then I'll come back to them and teach them how to use this as a tool to bless themselves instead of harm themselves. And it has been huge. Mental health, psychology, helps them overcome those fears, to express what's inside of them out in a creative way. Yes.
It's incredible hearing your stories, because I also believe that when you share your stories, this is a way to heal yourself. It's not the other way around. And very often people don't share their stories because they feel they're not ready. I'm too ashamed to share my story at this stage. And I have personally experienced that as well. And I thought at some point, oh, I have healed now, I can share my story. And then I started sharing my story. Then I realized how much more I had to heal. And more things. I was becoming more and more aware of that. And so that's so important, just to come together as a community and just be able to share, because we are unique, but at the same time, we are not as unique as we think we are, in terms of everyone goes through traumatic experiences, and the more we share that, the more we become one, and we feel that uniqueness.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's actually a very good statement. I like that, because it's the truth. Because I think I thought I healed, or at least I thought I did. But then once I started sharing my story, I was, you start remembering things, and you have these flashbacks, and it's like, did I truly heal? And so I'm still continuing to heal. Sometimes I ask people, like, do you really, truly, fully heal?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the person, the trauma. I have chosen to heal, but do you really, truly, completely heal? And so that's actually a great statement. I am still healing.
I believe, every woman needs another woman to make her feel more powerful and strengthful.
Yeah.
And that is where it all happens. And it is very important for all of us to, at one point of time, be that another woman, because we all tend to share our problems, but we have to encourage or build that environment and community
To be with
which
that
can strengthen others also.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why I shared my story, to be very transparent. Because if it wasn't for the Fearless Visionaries, when I was asked to write a chapter, I only saw the word, it says Fearless Visionaries, but I only saw visionary, right? Because I am a visionary. I said I was going to have a business in Dubai and Abu Dhabi 13 years ago. And I'm a visionary, so I had planned my life, nothing about my story. And then the whole time when people were saying to me, it was just like, you're really fearless. And I was like, I'm fearless? And I was like, it's like, yeah, who jumps on a plane and goes to Dubai with no contract? So like, they say, okay, I'm here. So, and then also be able to do what I've been doing. And so later on, once I shared my story within the community of women, I discovered that I was fearless. I've been acting fearless the whole time since I was born. This is only a chapter of my story. It's not my whole story, so it's a chapter. But I was able to have that group of women. So it's 18 of us, like I said, and each of us have trauma, genital cutting, human trafficking, suicide, depression, someone who had to actually raise her mother. She had breast cancer, and so she had to grow at an early age. So everybody has something different in that book. Or 2 books that we're sharing, but in that we had a private group. And the reason why I decided to share was because the women had gone through something, maybe not exactly, but we all had a trauma that we went through to be able to comfort. And I was like, okay, no one's going to judge me, no one's going to say anything. They're actually encouraging me. Wow, and it's a season. I feel like women around us pretty much have a story, but we also have a season when it's time for us to share our stories, and it just happened to be mine around this group of women. So you're exactly right, because had they not been there, I don't know if I would have shared.
So for me, the work we do at the Women with Stories really is about this community, because you feel you have gone through something, and then you come in and you hear someone else's story, and you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. It's not that bad, right? So that's a safe place, and most importantly too, because I believe so much about purpose and living your life intentionally as God would have you. I believe the experiences and the things we go through are a part of that journey. And so one of the things I also teach at the Women with Stories is how to take your story and profit from it. So whether it's writing a book, creating an online course, or traveling the world and traveling around the world and speaking, then now your story, that thing which almost destroyed you, has become your gift. And so your story is your gift. And it's so powerful, because now it's almost like you rising up to look at that thing or that circumstance or that person and say thank you. What you meant to destroy me has now turned around for my good. And it's powerful to get to that place where you can look at that person or the thing and just say, I'm a better person. Thank you. You wanted to destroy me, but look at me now. Look at me now, all the way in India, sharing my story. Look at me now.
That's rising of the phoenix.
I firmly believe that whatever happens in our lives, then there's always a reason behind it. We just can't see it at the time that it's happening.
Right.
So fast forward
Yes.
however many years and you go, there we go.
There we are.
But it's having the hindsight to be able to look back and then sort of pigeonhole it, if you like.
True.
You can heal and move on, isn't it?
True. And even, so when people really are going through stuff now and they come to me, I'm always like, don't be quick to have a pity party. Like, go through it. It's so powerful, because I'm at that place now where I'm looking back and I'm like, oh wow, everything really worked out for me, right? So when you're going through stuff, it will help you to understand, so instead of saying, why is this happening to me, is why is this happening for me? Because when you change that to me, to for me, it changes the narrative. So you can go through something, and instead of, so 2 people can go through something. One's asking, why is this happening to me? And the other person's asking, why is this happening for me? That person actually comes out with lessons, which can become a book, a speaking signature talk, an online course. And that's just so powerful. So while one person just stays in that place of bitterness and anger, the other person's just, bank alerts, cha-ching. This thing I got out from. Let's face it, every person we admire, every person we've read their books and we've been inspired by their journeys, they just went through that thing and put it together and now they're offering it to the world. And we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. So you go back and you check yourself. And you check the things that you've experienced. I don't care what it is. And it doesn't have to be ugly. It could be good, but you just haven't shared it with the world. So go back, and that's my call to action. Go back to your stories. Go back to the things you've experienced and really look into your life, and you will see how those experiences have shaped the woman and the man that you've become today. Now package it and offer it to the world, because we need it.
Yeah.
And if you need help, I'm here.
There's a saying, isn't there? If we change I to we, even illness becomes wellness.
Ah,
That's good. I like that.
I like that. Powerful.
I wish I could claim that it was mine. I can't remember. I can't remember where I heard it, so it's not mine. But I think that just it sums everything up, really, doesn't it? We change I to we, even illness becomes wellness.
Illness becomes wellness. Wow. Tweet that. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it all really just comes back to the mindset and what we think. We have that power to manifest whatever we want. So if we're saying like, oh, I'm not worthy of that, or like, oh, I don't know, I don't have any good things to say, like, then you're probably not going to rise up, right? You're not going to be able to take those next steps. And we, like you were saying, it's not. You want to live in that trusting mindset, trusting your passion. You each have that seed inside of you for a reason. Those passions, those dreams. You need to learn how to speak them out and not be afraid to. Don't hold them in anymore. Share them. Speak them out. The more you speak them, the more you say, like, I am worthy. I am going to do this. I am going to India. I am going to share these stories, these passions with people. That's when God source, like, that's when things will start opening up for you, right? And you're going to be living in that goddess mindset, knowing that you are powerful and that you're worthy.
Best session of the day, man.
Thank you so much.
I want to leave you all with this. I feel like in my heart I need to share this with you. So one of the things I use to share is, as we know, we have technology today, right? So we're all texting, we're sending messages. And so for those of you who all have teenagers or have children that are in college, I encourage you just to always have that conversation where you pick up the phone with them and say, are you okay? Because a lot of times right now we send a message, right? And then they can send it back and I'm fine, but they might not be fine. And for me, it wasn't technology because of course I was younger then, but I can always tell my mother, I'm fine, I'm okay, you know, but I wasn't fine. And she was always there, but she never knew what I was going through. She didn't know anything about my suicide until my 6th attempt when I was in the hospital. And so I said today I needed to share that because I know as parents sometimes we'll send just messages, and I do it myself. But now I'm going to, okay, no, I need to see your face. FaceTime, Skype, whatever it is we have to do, I need to be able to see your face, to be able to see, to make sure that you're fine. So I share that with you all just to say, just to make sure sometimes you just pick up that phone instead of that text message, just make sure that your loved ones are okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Okay, so Wendy, we have to take a picture. Wendy?
No.
Oh, God. Amanda. Wendy, I'm holding on to you. Amanda. We have to take a picture and then we're going to invite the rest of you. Can we take first? Can we take first? Can you take this first?
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Please come join us. Yes, of course. Everyone, yes, please.